You are now chopping it up with the Nerd BarberShop Podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Nerd BarberShop Podcast. I'm Taryn Williams. Thank you so much for clicking on this video and hanging out with me for a little bit. So this episode of the podcast is going to be very similar to my episode talking about the Marvels. We're going to be talking about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Not necessarily a review of the show or anything like that, but just be talking about it. You know, what I liked, a little bit what I disliked. Not necessarily a review, but I just want to talk about it because if you didn't know, I'm a big Scott Pilgrim fan. I actually played, I had, I don't know where it is, Scott Pilgrim versus the World on Blu-ray. I bought that. I love when the movie came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but I remember when I was in college, it's one of the first Blu-rays I ever bought. So I had that. When the game came out on PlayStation 3, I actually played it, beat it. The game actually re-released not too long ago on Ubisoft Connect, I believe. So I actually have that on my computer. I have a Scott Pilgrim versus the World shirt. I actually have the entire collection of the manga. I have my precious little box set. I have all 8 issues, I think, is the manga, but I have all of that. I have that at home. I have limited run games. Shout out to limited run games. They actually did when they re-released the game. And a bunch of like little stuff, and they did like t-shirts and hoodies. They have enamel pins, which I almost bought twice, but I didn't because I just couldn't pay $100 for the set. That's just mentally I couldn't do it. But they had a Steam case. So I actually have a Scott Pilgrim versus the World the game travel case for my Steam, a travel case for my Switch. So I actually have that. I'm just a big fan, and so I was really excited when. And also during the pandemic, they actually did a table read of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where a lot of the cast came back. Not everybody, but a lot of the cast, they did a table read, and Brian Lee O'Malley, he did like sketches and stuff, like original sketches that he was like auctioning off for charity and stuff like that during the pandemic, which was really cool. So when they announced that Netflix was doing an anime for Scott Pilgrim, like their own like little anime show, I was really excited, and they brought back the entire voice cast from the movie. And it was really, really dope. I was like super excited. It came out on November 17th. 8 episodes are available right now on Netflix. Go ahead and check it out if you haven't. Also, spoiler alert, spoiler warning, because I will be talking about the plot and stuff like that. I'll make sure there's a spoiler alert in the title of this podcast. And I really enjoyed it. It was really fun, really different. I wasn't sure what to expect out of it. I remember I was watching some comments, or I was reading like some comments on Facebook, and people thought it was just going to be just the movie, but just animated. And I kind of thought that a little bit too, but I remember reading that there was going to be like some new stuff and some different ideas. I wasn't sure how far they were going to move from the game, the movie, and the manga. I wasn't sure. And Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, again, spoiler alert, is completely different than all those things, and I love it. Like, the first episode is pretty much to a T of the movie. There's some other dialogue. They talk about Sonic. I don't think they talked about, or maybe they did. I don't remember they talked about Sonic in the movie as much. Maybe they did. I don't remember. But I think they did, now I'm thinking about it. But there's like some little new dialogue, but it goes all the way up to the Matthews Patel fight. And and then right at the end where it looks like Matthew actually beat Scott and killed Scott. And that's how the episodes end, with this big plot twist of, oh wait, what happened? And I was like, oh shit. I actually binge watched the entire season in 1 day, or 2 days, I think. Cause I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm just like so shocked. And so Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, it's more, and I like the idea of takes off, because at times it seems kind of, it tells you what the show is actually going to be about without telling you. Because you're like, takes off, you think takes off as in he's going to get more popular, takes off as he, like the band gets bigger, but takes off as in he disappears. He takes off, he goes away. And the series basically focuses on Ramona. So instead of like, how Scott Pilgrim versus the World is Scott taking on Ramona's evil exes so he can date her, this actually is more of Ramona reconciling with her exes and kind of learning to be friends with them. It's kind of this cool parallel to that, where she falls in love with Scott just like she does in all the other medias, and this time around he doesn't fight for her. She hasn't figured out where did he go. You know what I'm saying? Like the guy that she just met, she's going on this big adventure. Not a big adventure, but she's going around trying to figure out like what happened to this guy. And somebody that she just met, that she just figured out existed, but she cares enough about him to go to go on this like little side quest for him. This is really cool. You check out all the other stuff. You meet all the exes, of course. You meet like the bandmates. I do. Someone said this on Twitter or X, whatever, that there should have been more Kim in it, and I do think so too, because Kim does not get a lot of love. She's the drummer. She was also one of Scott's exes when they were younger, but they're still friends. But she doesn't get a lot of screen time, which is kind of weird. You get like the Knives relationship, like where he's dating Knives, but he ends up cheating on Knives with Ramona, and they're both talking to Scott at the same time, and Scott doesn't break it up with her until at the very end, where he like apologizes, like, "Hey, I'm so sorry." And Knives goes through her, her growth as a character, and where she does do all the things where she mourns Scott at the funeral, and then she grows, she cuts her hair, she becomes the extra bass player on the band, which is interesting because in the movie, young Neil becomes the bass player, but in this, Knives actually becomes the bass player in Sex Bomb. I love the music. I love the way they did the music and how like the effect of the music is in the show. It's so good. Like I love that. I wish they did more music episodes. Like the music was like a bigger part of the show. It's pretty substantial, but it's not like I was like, oh, there's this moment where like, the screen shakes and the way they zoom in, the way they have like all the effects and stuff is really really good. So Knives does like she takes over and becomes like the bass player after Scott disappears and comes back. But yeah, you meet all the exes. You get kind of they have like the League of Evil Exes, and they kind of have a falling out where like where Gideon and Matt and Matthew Patel, they kind of get into it, and they have this fight where like whoever is the winner takes all. Where if Gideon wins, Matt has to go do something. I forget what it is. Like Matthew has to do something, but if Matthew wins, he takes over the League of Evil Exes and gets Gideon's entire empire. And Matthew Patel actually wins. He actually beats Gideon, because like in all the other media, Gideon's like the strongest one out of all of them. But in this, Matthew Patel actually gets the upper hand and actually shows him like, hey, he puts hands on him. He becomes the leader of the Evil Exes, and Gideon ends up falling off and goes back to what was his name? Something Goose. It's just really stupid. And so yeah, so he kind of falls off, and you go through like his downward trajectory and see like where he is and stuff like that. You get to meet oh damn, I forget Chris Evans' character's name. I have it in my head. I can't think of his name. I forget the guy, the skateboarder. I forget all their names. But like you meet him, and kind of like he's on set for this movie, and some stuff happens, and he ends up getting replaced, and then he goes through his downward trajectory. And just all this stuff. It's really funny, really weird. I'm happy to get to see more of the exes and more of their personalities. You can like meet the twins, the guy that was the vegan, whose name I can't think of, Roxy, who is the one girl that Ramona dated, was kind of like their fight where they fight in the movie store, and they actually fight in like a video, and then kind of keep going through different movie scenes. And that was really cool. That's actually the only person that Ramona actually fights in the she's actually one of the only exes she actually fights. Like, and she doesn't fight the other guys. She kind of talks to them, and they kind of go through some stuff. And there are moments where it lulls a little bit, but in my opinion, it wasn't too bad, because I think again it's just fun, just more telling these stories and stuff. Like you get more Wallace, and Wallace Scott's gay roommate, and just you get like that, and then you get to see all these things. But then you really get the plot towards the end where they realize like what's happening and who's doing it, and then come to find out Scott disappeared through a vegan portal that the twins made, but it wasn't the twins of their world, it was twins from the future. And Scott actually got pulled into a portal to like 2035, I think, or like 10 years into the future, and Scott meets older Scott. And and older Scott's just kind of telling him where they live. He still lives with Wallace, which is hilarious. Wallace is married to someone who works at Nintendo. Ramona and Scott get married, and older Scott shows our Scott kind of their life. Like basically he shows like the game in the movie pretty much. Also, another really cool thing that they did was young Neil has this script. He's doing the precious life of Scott Pilgrim. So he's making basically in the movie that young Neil is making, or it's a movie that becomes a Broadway play, but it's the movie. It's basically the movie, the actual Scott Pilgrim versus the World movie. So it's like this kind of little meta joke between the animation, the movie, and the video game. They kind of combined them in this weird way. Well, I thought that was really cool that they actually have the movie and like all the stuff that happens in the movie and stuff what happens. Where like again, I can't think of his name, but the skateboarder, he dies like by doing this long grind. He dies, and he's like, that's stupid, I would never do that. But that happened in the movie, so this is some really fun stuff that they like combine all the little pieces and put it together. And so get Back to the Future with older Scott, just tell him like what happened, and they split up. They kind of separated for a little bit. They didn't get divorced, but it's just Ramona needed her space. There's also some nice little video game references when the code to get into like their to get into the house or to like the secret area where older Scott shows our Scott like the life that he lived. It's a fireball motion. It's he does quarter circle forward and punch, which is a fireball motion if you play Street Fighter. The little thing he used to see into Scott's life is the Virtual Boy from Nintendo, which is cool because Wallace married someone from Nintendo, so that's a nice little reference together. There's like a lot of Sonic callbacks. Even I like that Ramona in the future, she's still a mail carrier, but her mail carrying, like what she does, is a reference to Death Stranding, where she's wearing the outfit. She has all these packs of mail and stuff. It's Death Stranding. That's kind of cool. They do all these little video game references, like Back to the Future references. They do a lot of little stuff. It's really fun. And so we find out, like, so Scott, like, it's like, hey, I'll have to make these choices. Like, why don't you just talk to Ramona? Like, they, trying to figure it out. All this guy's like, no, I can't let you go back. You can't date her. You can't kiss her. Like, because it messes up all these things. And so Scott ends up leaving the future and comes back to the past with the help of future Ramona. And he gets back to the past. He sees he sees the gang. They're all together talking, and he tries to kiss President Ramona. He can't. There's this barrier over her. And so they're thinking, okay, it's the exes. So they go to the premiere of Matthew Patel is starring Scott in the Broadway version of Scott Pilgrim's My Precious Life. And so they're going through. So you think it's all like the exes, and so Scott's ready to fight, and they even do the versus music from the game. They cue it up every time Scott like gets into his fight position. They cue up the versus music from the game, and they're like, "I'm not trying to fight you. What the fuck is wrong with you? I'm not trying to fight you. Like, what are you doing?" And so you go through it and come to find out that Scott from actually older Scott becomes even older Scott, and he put that curse, he put nanotech in Scott's drink in the future to prevent him from kissing Ramona. And then come to find out, like, Gideon put bombs all around like the stage to get back on Matthew Patel for taking his, like, it's crazy. But they end up all getting taken to the future, and they have to fight even older Scott. That's why the last episode of the Netflix series. Usually it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's called The World versus Scott Pilgrim because it's all of them versus even older Scott, who basically turns into Akuma from Street Fighter. He's ripped. He's been training for like 10 years. He's ripped. He doesn't have a shirt on. He has like gray hair, red eyes. He's basically Akuma or Evil Ryu from Street Fighter. And they have to fight him. And they have to, fight him, and they fight him. But actually the person who ends up beating Scott, or even older Scott, is Ramona from the future. Right? Ramona from the future, Ramona from the present. They come together and they realize self-love, which I thought was kind of cool. Like, she loves herself, she loves her from the future, loves her from the past, and they became this being, this entity. I forget what they called her. And they beat even older Scott. And so they beat even older Scott. The Broadway play was a hit. Matthew Patel actually gives Gideon back his, the evil exes, all his industries, but all his companies, stuff like that. But he asked Gideon, hey, can I keep the musical? And Gideon's like, yeah. And they kind of hug and have like an evil laugh. And so, yeah, it's fun. It's different. Some people were complaining that it was so different, but I'm like, they wanted to do something different. If they just rehashed the game, the manga, and the movie again, people would have been complaining. And there's like a post-credit scene, where there's like, they kind of tease there could be a season 2. I don't know if there's going to be a season 2 because I think they set it up for it. So if they want to, if everybody wants to come back, they can. I don't think so. I think it was designed to be kind of a one and done, even though they set up a season 2, just so they didn't like write themselves into a hole. So they have that flexibility. But I really enjoyed Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. It was different. It was fun. I liked all the stuff from the movie and the manga and the game. It's blended into this, like the animations. I thought it was so dope. They got all the voice actors back. There were some moments where it lulled a little bit. Like, there were some moments where it's like, okay, get through it. Like, come on, yeah. But this is fun. I like you got to see all the other characters. And there wasn't a lot of fighting, but I think it wasn't this one. It's like, you wish there was a little bit more fighting, but this one wasn't designed for being fighting. This was more designed for Ramona to reconcile everything and to talk. It'd be more of the human side of things, and not necessarily fight. If you want to see the fighting, read the manga, play the game because you control Scott and them. Play the game, and watch the movie. You know, if you want to see more of the action side of it. But this wasn't as action heavy. This is more just them like getting to know like the exes more and some of the side characters and stuff like that. So if you enjoy Scott Pilgrim, like the media, like everything, this is a great addition to the Scott Pilgrim like universe. And it's fun. It's a good read. It's a good read. It's a good watch. 8 episodes. They're all about 25 minutes long. It's not that long to watch. Definitely check it out if you have Netflix. I really enjoyed it. I personally would like to see another season, but again, if it's not another season, whatever. I enjoyed it. I think people need to stop complaining and relax. They gave you something different with the Scott Pilgrim characters. Hopefully they keep doing stuff and they keep maybe expand. Maybe we do get like, maybe we actually get to see like an older version of Scott. No, who knows? Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this brand new episode of the Nerd BarberShop Podcast. I greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to get more consistent. I'm going to try to drop stuff every week now. We will see how this turns out. But thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it just for all the support of the podcast. I know there hasn't been many videos on the YouTube channel or as many podcasts as I would have liked. But I'm going to try and get this going and try and be more consistent with my content because, again, people actually listen to the podcast. You who are listening right now, you listen to the podcast, and one person listens to the podcast. That's enough for me to keep going. So thank you so much. Also, this is the 70th episode of the podcast, which is really, really cool. So we're 30 away from 100. I'm trying to get to 100. I have no idea what I'm going to do for 100 episodes. Probably nothing, but we'll see. Again, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate this and all the support. All in forever, slicing, dicing, gaming. It's not just a motto. It's a lifestyle. I'll see you next podcast. Later.